I just decided to kind of improvise my way into the first bit after I hear that we have a rapper. Actually, that made me think of my own youth when I was learning how to do beatboxing. So actually, we could make a good couple, saying, "Let's you do the rapping," and then I thought, well, it's all about you guys, right? So you need to do the beatboxing. That was the idea now. So I'm not sure if you're up to this, but I'm going to start with it anyway. And this is also going to give the guys from, not from Holland, actually a Dutch lesson. Because there's a very simple trick to learn beatboxing. But it's a Dutch trick. Sorry. So for the guys who are not Dutch, you have to also learn the Dutch words. One of them is actually a bit more international, so you'll get away with that. So it's a doable kind of challenge. Are you up for this? Okay. So let's try this. So there's 2 words that you need to be able to pronounce in a certain way before you can do beatboxing. This is how you teach your kids beatboxing. This will be a lifetime experience. This is going to be amazing. Okay? Ultimately, if you practice this, you'll be able to do the like that. Okay? But not yet. Okay? Be careful. Okay, so don't try this at home. The first thing we need to understand is the word poffertje. Okay? Poffertje. Can we say poffertje? 1, 2, 3. Okay? And now we have crackertje. Cracker. Like a cracker, but a crackertje. Like you're living in the Middle East. Crackertje. Can we say crackertje? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now if you combine those, you say poffertje and crackertje. Okay? Can we do that? 1, 2, 3. Okay. And now we need to put some emphasis on the words, because if you do it properly, you get like simple, huh? You didn't expect that. You didn't see that coming. So we're going to try that for a couple of times, and then actually you could do some rapping if you want, but that's all optional, of course. So we can try this, go like poffertje and crackertje, and then after a while we can do some changes. Okay, so we're going to do this together on 3, 2, 1. It's amazing, you guys. So this is it. If you practice this 5 minutes a day, alone in the bathroom or something, while showering or something, you'll be amazing. You'll have a new career at and your kids. They're like, oh my God, you're so amazing. So this is I wanted to make this start because I was going into this program and I was looking at the theme, of course, and then it says the weakest function, right? Your company is as agile as your weakest function. And I thought about this, and the first kind of thing that jumped to my mind was the weakest link, right? So this is a bit, I don't know if you know the program. In Dutch it's even worse. We have this lady who's really shaking her head, you're the weakest link, like that. There's a program in which there's a couple of people and they need to bond together, work together, and then one is the weakest link, goodbye. So thinking about that, I'm like, well, this is kind of if you tell, imagine you go into a company, you're from HR, you're the weakest link, goodbye. That's, so I was thinking, well, on that part, it's not a theme that would really catch me. But then I thought about it again, and I'm like, well, but it's true. You're only as agile as your weakest function, but it doesn't only apply to the scale in the company, it also applies to you. You're only as agile as your weakest function, which is probably your brain. So we're going to be talking a little bit about business agility and about brain agility, which are, to me, the main 2 weakest links in our current ways of thinking and working. Now, the Agile community has been around since 1990, officially 2001, of course. So this has been a while, right? We've been doing this for quite some time now. And the reports show projects are getting better, we're getting better, and it's improving, and we're all sitting here because we believe that this is the right way. But if you look at the facts, there's something a little bit wrong. If you compare the amount of features that are rarely used by our customers, by our consumers, it's still as bad as 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So this is coming from Standish, the Chaos Report. They're kind of looking at things saying, okay, how is this? So they do see that agile projects have a higher chance of being successful than a waterfall project. Fully agreed, quality will be better, timelines, on budget, all these things. But the effectiveness of what we do, the real promise of Agile, being able to respond to change, iteratively learn what to build next, not build, maximizing the amount of work not done. We're not capitalizing on that one. So I was thinking about, why is this? So what are we doing here? If you ask people about this metric, they'll all go like, yeah, I recognize that for the market, I recognize that for IT or for whatever, but not with our project. And I will contest your brain, you don't have to say it, but you're thinking the same right now. It cannot be that bad. We do better than 50%. 50%, yeah, these features, but they're really needed because of other reasons. We have them, they're still valuable. So we all have the tendency, and I had this kind of insight because people were talking about this, and every single time when you tell this, they say, yeah, that's true for the market, but not with us. And then people give the same example every single time. I understand this for Microsoft Word, which you use every day, and you're kind of like, well, there's tons of features in there that we never use, but not for our project. Now, just recently, I was with the Microsoft team. Guess what they said? It's exactly the opposite. They say, yeah, we see that, but not with Microsoft Word. We have all the features that are being used. So why is this? And it's actually because of, and I had this insight when doing, does everybody know value stream mapping? Kind of, okay? There's a calculus thing in there that makes this interesting. If you're going to look at a value stream map, you look at the complete and accurate ratio. So how much percentage of your stuff actually goes through complete and accurate to the next step. Now, if that on average is 95%, okay, that's pretty good. Everybody figures like, well, 95%, that's pretty good. If you have 10 steps, the rolled complete and accurate ratio is, what do you guess? Something around 50%. So it's something like that. So if we're only going to go in 3 levels of requirements, and we're going to use the same logic to kind of say, well, what would happen if we would not build 15% of the epic anymore? If we, and I'm going to use this thing because it's so cool, if it works. Yes, there it is. Just slow. I'm not going to use it. I had this cool gadget that I figured I had to show you. So 15% of the epic. If you're building this 15%, that doesn't feel too bad. It's like 85% of the stuff is valuable. Same applies there. Features. 50% of the features could be left. Yeah, but that's only 15%. But if you start doing this on every level, you skin off the waste at every single level of your requirements tree, you get 15%, 15%, 50%, which goes back into this measure, which leads to exactly the 40 to 50%. So this is the role required ratio that we currently have because of building the extra 15%. Now, we're already trying to do MVPs and all that, but that thing is really something that needs to be reconfigured. How many people of you are using the term MVP? Couple. The rest is like, okay, what does that mean, right? Minimum viable product? Everybody in there, yes? We're okay? So this means we're going to do the minimum viable thing. This is the thing from Lean Startup. Eric Ries said you have to start with a minimum viable product. Now, the definitions of a minimum viable product have been quite diverse, you could say. We have, of course, the maximum viable product, which is still MVP. You could get away with that. And you have the most valuable player. Actually, somebody thought that was actually the most valuable player, but that's not in here. The minimum valuable product is sometimes used, but then you get into the discussion, what is value? And how much of it do you want? When is it valuable to you? The most valued product manager, I've had a situation where there was a team, and this is literally a product management team, and they were having a workshop on defining the MVP for a large system of 100 people working on it. Okay, so they're coming back, white smoke, white smoke. We have an MVP defined. So I say, okay, how did it go? And they said, we have 74 features. That's our MVP. I'm like, whoa, 74? So there's a couple of questions now racing through my brain. First, 74, that's a lot of features. That's like, if that's your first version, I'm kind of scared of what's next, right? This is insane. The second question was, how do you get to 74? Why not 73? Why not 75? Why not 70-ish? Well, how do you do it? And he said, oh, that was real simple. We worked on it, and we discussed every single feature until we all agreed. So that's kind of the MPP, you could say. That's the minimum political product. If your product is kind of liked by all your stakeholders, you're overdoing it. It's a very simple thing. The rule of a MVP is that you have to be ashamed of it going out the door, which is kind of a scary thought for lots of enterprises to say, we're going to bring something out and they're not going to like it for some kind of reasons. They're going to love it for some reasons because that's the viable part. But the minimum part also says, I need to be really scarce. Now, low quality viable product is not what we mean. So we don't want to say, let's bring a crap product out and see how it works. You know how that works. Actually, when Apple made the transition to go into MVP thinking, their first step, and some of you who have iPhones know this, it was the Maps application. Remember the first time they came with the Maps application? That thing would have me standing in the Atlantic Ocean right now, or something like that. It was kind of a total crap application. It didn't work, it crashed, it had all kinds of mistakes and everything. So that was the wrong implementation of an MVP. But at least it made them see, we need to go this route, because Samsung is kicking our ass on speed to market, on feedback. So we had the same kind of idea of building a high-quality product, but minimum. Creating complaints about missing functionality is the best thing you can do. So I have an example from Philips, actually, the Hue system, the lights. The lights that they are using you can actually color the lights and set everything. The first version they came out with, and I actually bought it. I don't know why, but it was kind of I was engaged with Philips in some kind of way. I felt like I have to do this. And was this functionality? It was stupid. You had an app on which you could set the color of a light, period. So that was it. And marketing and product management said, you cannot put this out in the market. This is insane. You cannot do this. This is bad stuff. And they brought it out, the team, and what happens? People start to complain. It doesn't have GPS location. It doesn't have alarms and set timers. All these things. You can't shut off and turn on the lights easily. You have to go in through 3, 4, 5 menus before you can actually do something. It doesn't work. So now you start listening. The 1,000 most seen complaints were about the timer, the alarm clock, the GPS not. The shutting off was actually not even figured out. And they said, well, a lot of people are complaining about not being able to turn off the lights because that was a slider you put to the left, which is a hassle if you want to turn off your lights. So they knew exactly what to build and where to stop. And there's tons of examples where you can find the pattern of figuring out where the 40% is by building too little, by building a little bit, instead of massive functionality requirements. A requirement is kind of the wrong word here. A requirement, by its nature, says, I know I need this. It's required. Where basically at that point in time, you're saying, I think I want this. So it's more like a think-irement or something that is less fixed. Because if you fix it and you give it to people, people are going to build it. Okay, so that's the kind of story on how to think about the value assessment. Now, the value assessment for people is kind of an mission impossible. Okay, so this is actually, your brain is not capable of making the right decisions. Your brain will automatically choose the short-term benefit over the long-term kind of benefit every single time. Your brain does not understand well enough what it means to get 1,000 euros next year. A 10 or a 25 right now seems more appealing. This is the reason we don't typically do the things that make us healthy, because the dangers of health are way over there. And I'm hungry for this bacon burger right now. So that my hunger and that feeling is more important to me. So I'm going to eat it and then see about the heart problems 20 years from now. You see people who had a heart attack and survived actually pick up the habit real quickly because they now get it. Ooh, that was really dangerous. So our brain is not built to do value assessment too well. And I've seen some interesting conversations from companies who have this built into their kind of into their system to make the difficult decisions more dominant in their decision models. So you can do all the weighted shortest job first and all these kinds of models to assess value and relative estimation, prioritization, but it's all based on this brain thing. So story mapping and user story point estimations and all these things, they don't help to prioritize business value in terms of how to balance long-term benefits versus short-term benefits, which is one of the problems of these MVPs. We're doing what would work now, doing what would work now, what worked now. Oops, legacy, right? Because we haven't spent anything on legacy. You don't go to your business and say, we need to invest in being as fast as we are now, because otherwise, a year from now, we'll be really slow with delivering the new features. We'll see it then. We'll do that then, when the problem hits us. We are only good in solving problems that are in our face. That's a human nature. That's because of the dangers of the saber-toothed tiger, if you will. That's what we were designed for. So, how to deal with this? So, I saw an interesting interview with Coolblue, who did something interesting in their models to kind of compensate for this. Now, profit is short-term. It's easy. You have a business case, and it's a short feature thing, and then as a business case, it brings us so much money. Oh, we need this. Yes, this is the most important thing. This can make us 10,000 euros. So it's the short term. So focusing on customer delight, which is more long-term belief, if we keep delighting the customer, we will be a successful company. It's a long-term thing. Then you would take a hit on profit to make that happen. So they, at Coolblue, made actually their customer delight part dominant in their structure. They said, let's always choose for this one, even if we see that it will jeopardize some of our profits. So we need to make these decisions really more rational by making a rule that does this, because the human mind won't do this. It's impossible. And then the last thing is agile coaches, agile consultants, business consultants, we're always talking about prioritization, right? You prioritize your backlogs and whatnot. And I was thinking about this because if you start estimating and prioritizing your backlog fully, like one queue, then imagine what would happen to the country, the Netherlands, or any other country, if you will, and the budget it has. Now, I can imagine there's something with child molesting that will win the priorities every single time. Right? So, no money for education because we could actually save a kid being molested, which is always, in here, dominantly prioritized. So if you're only going to use prioritization, you're going to be stuck into one side of your mission, your vision, your kind of thing. So at the top of this, you need to balance it. And this is also the reason why we don't typically innovate disruptively, because that will never win priority. We'll never get the priority. It's impossible, because there's no real good gain to be found. It's impossible to find it, kind of see. So new weird stuff needs to get its own kind of, well, sack of money. And in here, you're going to prioritize. And in this system, you're going to prioritize, because this is one thing in which you're going to make less of a priority of budget, of profit, and more of customer delight. This is the typical kind of solving the pinnacle. Now, this is where it starts to go into the teams, into the systems, into the frameworks, if you will. This is where Scrum comes in, and Safe, and Spotify, and Less, and Nexus. I'm not going to be talking about that too much. You know, I'm using Safe most of the time because I talk the language, and I found that most industry kind of enterprises want to talk the same language. There's only a few disruptive people out there that will like to implement tribes in their corporate, which is great if you can. If you can find somebody like that, it's really cool because it really makes faster change, potentially. But from a change perspective, you could say, well, management is not going to be on board as easy if you do these kinds of things. So you need to go back to basics with these kind of things. So if you have a priority system, if you start balancing your budget, the main truth after that, regardless of the framework or the implementation stuff, is that you need to bring people together and say, it's now up to you. I'm not going to give you any other KPIs than that balanced thing of the customer delight and the profit. That's it. And whether you're from finance, HR, developer, tester, boss, I don't care. Here's a group of people who can do it. If I give you one Scrum team, a company is one Scrum team, and I say, well, is this going to be a trouble to really maximize value like this? Like, nah, that's going to be easy. These guys are going to, be able to run it. If you say 50 people, you say, well, you need to organize something, but probably you could get away with it. If you go beyond, like hundreds of people, thousands of people, that's where it gets nasty. So don't try to do something that's kind of not possible. Creating a group dynamic of 2,000 people is going to be something that you need to use the balance for rather than the priority whip. And say, okay, everybody works on the same thing. The goal is customer delight, profit. Your group needs to work on something of your own area to maximize that. There will be interfaces, there will be kind of dependencies with other systems, but that's something you need to start taking care of. So in general, if you look at the current big transformations, they start to do this more and more, start to combine all kinds of weird people on the trains and tribes and systems, whatnot, to kind of say, okay, you're HR, but that's more of a capability. It's more like, sorry, it's more like something we need as a craft. But the function, the role, we just need these 50 people to work together and make something really cool. That's it. And if you can do this in a short-cycled way, you can show what you have. You don't have to control anything. You can control the end instead of the start. So I think, in essence, this is the scaling framework. Bringing 100 people together and say, okay, here's your priority. This is what you need to start doing. Now, this, of course, starts to hit your brain. Oh, that's so sweet. Thanks. You're the master. Learning. You're all thirsty now, right? So, having a shared mission, a shared thing, is what you see consistently coming back at any scale if you have an organization that starts to implement these kind of MVPs and all that. It starts with a social system of people working together. Now, that kind of feeling is enhanced or increased if they share a mission, or, would be even better, a life support system. I went rafting one time, and I was sitting in a boat, and I didn't know what to do, of course. I just had the paddle, and there was a steerman. So he says, whenever we hit something, I will tell you what to do. We'll give you commands like paddle your ass off or something like that. And that's what you do. And then there's the overboard safety line. It's like the OS line. And he says, yeah, we call that the oh shit line. Because there's a rope around the boat, and they said, well, why is it called the oh shit line? Well, if you have to use it, oh shit. So that creates a feeling of like, okay, we're in this together, and it's really dangerous if somebody goes overboard. That team doesn't require a kind of purposeful mission. Okay, they're going to work together like hell to make sure this thing stays straight. And they're going to listen, and they're going to help each other, and if somebody starts kind of threaten to fall into the water, you're going to grab him, because that's what makes sense. If you don't have that, if you don't have an oh shit kind of system, you need to put the mission more like we're going to the moon, or we're going to do something really amazing, we're going to do something that has not been done before. So this is one of the things in leadership and management, which brings us to the weakest link, ourselves, the function, leadership and management, which are two different things. I'm going to just combine them here for simplicity. But the agility of your brain or the agility of leadership is going to actually define the system that's being managed, led, whatever it is. So we need to start talking about how you respond to things and how people respond to you, rather than look at how organizations scale or whatever. Because if this starts to become into the right way, scaling becomes kind of an easy afterthought. I've seen many large systems transform. Some are really like, oh, this is so cool, and others are like, meh, yeah, it kind of works. They do the motions. It's okay-ish. I have a maturity 3.2 or something. And here you don't even care about maturity. It's happening. So these two things are not based on which model you use or whatever. It's based on how we interact and what language we use to steer each other, to help each other, to guide each other. This is all about our human body. So the first thing with the brain is that it's autonomous, which is kind of a, difficult thing, because now with everything I say, you've actually done this a couple of times now. With everything I've said so far, your brain goes like, do I agree? Yeah, kind of, I'll listen. Or you say like, no, and you're going to sit like this. Don't see it like that. I have different experiences. So your brain is trained to do this because this makes you unique. This is how you build your system. You lead your environment. This is how you walk through life. You're sitting like, oh, yes, I believe that. No, I don't believe that. So these are the things you want. So if you want people to follow, to be part of something, the best way to do this is to start with why, as Simon Sinek has said before me, of course. I mean, that's because and why is that? Because it's easier for people to say, yes, I agree, if you start with a common idea of why you want this. Your brain is actually almost lured into this yes road. We need all to be able to be safe and walk the streets. Yes. Therefore, yes. And that's why I want this feature. Yes. What did I just say? So that's how you get people involved in your cause, because you make your cause the primary thing to agree on. And then even people can say, well, then your feature needs to be different. I think you're wrong. We need to tweak it, or we need to change it, because yes, I agree, we want to get there. So the brain is your first mechanism to go into if you want to make change, right? It's the only way. A company, I'm transforming an organization. Well, do you? I don't, actually. If you think about it, there's no such thing as an organization. I think Elon Musk made the best remark about this. He said, a company or organization is nothing more than a group of people sharing a secret. That's it. So if you want to make change the people, which means you have to change yourself, because how interaction is done is via you, or your leadership, or your management, or whatever it is. So these are the brain basics. Now the brain has some funny things. There's the smart part of the brain, which is the neocortex, which is what makes us sit here and listen and assess and reason and apply logic and deduction. Like, okay, if that's true, then yes. These kinds of things are there. And then there's the limbic brain, which is the brain that kind of says, I'm here for language, or I'm here for decision making, behavior, bonding, these kinds of things, feelings. Right? But the thing to touch that brain, to get into that brain, is actually the only thing you can do is language, body language or spoken language. So you naturally come in here with your thing, and then you need to be able to touch this, because this is where decision making is done. It's not over there. Everybody thinks it's over here, but if you take a decision and you say, I considered all effects and therefore this is my decision, you already took that decision. You just rationalize it afterwards. You say, well, and it's because of, and that makes it reasonable. So it's literally like that. So language is our only way to touch the feeling and behavior and get loyalty or these kinds of things, which is why we have to think about our language. And then our organizations and our change patterns are not really built for this, if you really think about it. How many times have you sat with management and they say, well, okay, we're going to call it a tribe, as an example. And then ultimately, if you start discussing this, management will say, yeah, that's just semantics. They even do this hand like this, right? That's just semantics. No, it's not. How about we call it an Agile release prison? Everybody starts to like, no, let's not do that. That would give the wrong impression. Aha. So there is a meaning to words. James Kaplan once had this thing, somebody asked him, can we have a sprint zero? I don't know if you're using this, so sorry if you do. I'm quoting. So, and he listened to this, it came right out of an audience. He said, like this, and he said, sprint zero. And he says, a sprint is a defined time on which you deliver value. Words mean things, so no, you cannot have a sprint zero. That's a preparation for a sprint. Call it a preparation. Because it's not delivering value, it's the preparation for being able to deliver value. Because if you call it sprint zero, you just gave yourself 2 weeks notice or something. So words mean things, and it's the only way to touch the brain. The only way to touch the brain is to go in with language. So change the language, you will see changed behavior, which is why Agile has been successful in the first place. We don't call it project master or anything, we call it scrum master. That's a funny term. Yes, it's what we call it, sorry. Because the guy is the boss of Scrum. He needs to kick ass in Scrum, not the team. He's not the team master. We have product owners now. That's a new term, PO. We kind of abbreviate it now. Well, user stories, funny things, which kind of make us think about things differently. If you look at 3 different companies giving an interview on their Agile implementation, you all will get a different feel for what's happening inside. You know immediately what it's like. If you see an interview with Coolblue, these guys, they're breathing Agile. They don't even use the word. You're really Agile. Oh, I didn't know that. We're just doing stuff. We're doing the most important thing first. And everybody's in on this. We do it together. Every day we do it a little bit better. That's what they talk about. They don't talk Agile, but they've been Agile from 19 years ago when they started. But you can hear that in the language, in the way they think about customer first, the way they talk about a customer, with like a glow in their eyes, which is, why language is so important. So if you want to change the system, change the language. One more example of this, and then I'll stop on this part, is if you want to complement a team, what do you say? They have done a sprint, they worked really hard, so what do you say? Great job, well done. These are the typical things, right? Which focuses on what? Labor. You're treating them as resources, right? Which is another thing. If we're going to talk today about HR, the word resource is a bit, shaky. But the thing is that if you compliment people on labor, for them to get another compliment means work harder. Not smarter, harder. So this has been tested with kids drawing. So kids makes a drawing of a rocket. And you can try this at home. You can see this actually. If you have kids, you know this happens. 5, 6, 7-year-old. They're drawing a rocket. They're coming to you with the result. Ta-da! It's ugly, I know, but you don't say that. Okay? Tip. I've done that once. That's ugly. You need to redo that. But that's not how you deal with kids, right? So you say, "Oh, well done, great job." What happens? He runs back and draws another rocket. So within no time, you'll be sitting here with a pile of ugly rockets, right? Which is not what you want your kid to do. You want your kid to just keep drawing rockets. So if you change your language to say, "Oh, that's a beautiful rocket," he's like, "Aha." The result is beautiful, so I'm going to do something next. So he draws whatever it is, a dinosaur. You can see from this, I have a son. It's not. Well, I have daughters too, so that would be a princess and horses. The problem with princesses and horses is that they always ask me to draw it because it's so hard. And so I always figure like a rocket is easy. Like, boom, you can fire, done. But a horse or a princess, difficult. So that's why I'm using the example. So language drives our behavior big time. Okay, so this is the first lesson that you need to take in and say, okay, so what does that mean? We have a couple of things on our sleeve. So the next thing is our nerve system. If you want a system to be stressed,
It's actually quite easy. Start yelling at it, or start expecting of it. Start putting deadlines into it. Start making the pressure felt, like stand in somebody's neck saying, did you finish it already? Is it done? We need to have this done by the end of the week. This is all pressure which causes people to stress. So adrenaline is up, etc. So the stress level goes up, cortisol is produced, and the system is in this moment of agony. In which part your virtues are execution, decision, and focus. Your eyeballs focus, your muscles constrain, everything is kind of ready to run because there's a saber-toothed tiger in the bush. That's what this is for. Now it shuts down some pretty cool things at the same time. So you cannot do reflection and creativity, which is, if you look at current knowledge workers' areas, kind of a big deal, right? The other thing you can't do anymore is digest or give birth to children. Well, I can't do that anyway. But as a general concept, it's actually why there's a tendency now to say the nurses in the hospital shouldn't yell at you anymore to say push, because your body is going to be in stress mode as a woman. You kind of put your muscles like this, which is going to make it more painful. So there's actually a lot of things that go down if you're in stress mode. So we've been trained in the long-cycled systems as management, as leaders, to create stress, to create pressure, to put the timelines on, because otherwise nothing gets done. The virtues of a knowledge worker are actually over here, which is exactly why Jeff Sutherland, when he went for Scrum, said, I want to create a bubble of freedom for the team to work. I want them to feel safe, and I'm going to be the guy protecting them. I'm going to be standing in the way, like the fighter pilot he is, to make sure nobody touches the team. So this is the way of thinking of the guy who invented Scrum. He said, I want a bubble of freedom. I want these guys to feel safe and free. So you can never shut down on the virtues of execution. So, and the funny thing is that a sprint by itself is a stress machine. It's a stressor. We've seen this at bol.com in the early years already. People were actually burning out because we had management stress plus process stress. Every 2 weeks you have to show your stuff. Every 3 weeks in Bol. So every 3 weeks you have to show your demo, show your demo, show your demo. It needs to be done. And then management on top of this. Are we done yet? Are we done yet? Now if you combine this, over the top. So our system needs to create a little bit more relaxation. So leadership and management, make it easy. The sprint takes care of itself. The time boxes take care of itself. So create a time box system, a synchronized system that produces something, and then say, let's have some fun. Now I got into something that I have been, so I started studying biology and psychology a couple of years back because I figured, like, well, if I'm going to have to make change, and change is nothing more than people, then I should get out of this process mesh and get into this kind of thing. Okay, so I actually went into play. So playful behavior is actually interesting because for a long time we have thought that play is meant to cause animals, kittens and etc., little animals, to learn how to be a grown-up. So the function of play was perceived to be learning how to deal with real-life situations. Role play, fighting, all these kinds of things. It's actually not true. Play is an important thing for everybody in here. So we all have play needed as part of our work, as part of our life. So I learned actually this thing by looking at this is actually my son, and the interesting thing is, if you look at him playing, what you see is somebody who's fully committed to breaking my camera or whatever it is. He's fully focused, he's really creative, and he's going to get this shit done. If you have your teams in this atmosphere, it's pretty cool. I had the personal learning with teams I played with, literally, that they became far more effective by not focusing on work and labor and these kinds of things, but make it playful. In Philips, we started implementing process descriptions, which was a tedious, nasty job to make. And we turned it around and said, let's make comics. Let's produce comics, like cartoons. that was real fun, and within 2 weeks, the team was kind of done with the process descriptions for a full QMS. And everybody's like, well, we should get some work done now because we've played for so long. I thought, well, we're actually done. Whoa, that was fast. So this has been kind of the new way of thinking about work, is to not add play after work, but make the work playful itself, which is an interesting way of thinking if you think about creating something that works for a longer time, that is sustainable. So if I look at the great situations of Agile release trains and tribes and whatnot, and everybody recognizes, if you have this cool tribe or whatever, it has this. There's a clown inside that makes it playful, that makes these things happen. You know, if you do an event, you make some fun with the people. So rather than the iron triangle of budget and functionality and these kinds of things, I tend to make a more realistic triangle in which we put purpose, urgency, and play together to say, this is what you need to balance. Now, this for leadership is creating a kind of an opposable grip. You need to have a precision grip and a force grip at times. When do you know when to be strong and not be playful? One is the cut the crap moment, which has always been the question of leadership. They're kind of walking around like, yeah, we need to let the teams go. They need to decide. It's their choice now. So how does that work? I've actually come up with something, because a strong leader, you know, if you lead by example, people actually follow you, and just like lemmings, all die, right? So the idea of being strong all the time doesn't work, because then you'll run off a fence together, because then you are the guy who knows as a leader. So from management's perspective, I came up with this simple model, and it's next slide is even more simplified. That's actually my last slide. That kind of says, when do you do what? Now, if you're in the looking at the future, which is vision, and you're on a strategic level, these are your why questions. If somebody touches your why, your purpose, don't mess with me. So if somebody's going to come up, we're doing an agile transformation, I'm in the why of that thing. If somebody comes to me and says, well, maybe we should waterfall here, we'll do something, that's coming into my core principles, my core values, no way. So if people ask me why, I need to be really strong. If people ask me what, which is strategy operationally, so what is it you want? I need to be really clear. I need to clarify, explain, get people coordinated. So the how question, so how do we do this? Whoa, that's not my question, right? I need to kind of say, well, that's your job. And when people ask me to say, okay, how do you think we're doing or something, I need to be totally brutally honest. No kind of positive story when it's really crappy, and no crap story when it's actually quite positive. So I need to be really dead on honest from here, or well, actually from the limbic brain, if you're going to think about it. So I put this into coffee machine language to make it even easier, because then you can actually do this every single stupid day. Okay? So this is the kind of ending to say, okay, when people ask why, be strong. When people ask what, be clear. When people ask how, be gone. Run for your life. And when they ask you to reflect, be fair.